Welcome to our next episode of Chicago Business Community. I'm sitting down with the U of I alum and current student who's an innovator and entrepreneur at heart, and I think this is a real cool conversation. You've made a lot of impact.
My name is Ayesha. I'm a co-founder and CEO of ASL Aspire, and we are building an edtech platform that teaches STEM to deaf kids through games.
I have a lot of questions on how that came about,
Yeah.
but could you give a little bit of background into, honestly, before you started college, just, you as a kid, how you were raised, and then, what your interests were in college and just the whole story.
Yeah, so I started, I guess we could start from the beginning. I really loved math and science. I mean, very basic as a brown girl, but I knew I wanted to go into something STEM related. So, I ended up at U of I as undeclared engineering. I wanted to branch out. I didn't want to go to UW-Madison because that's my hometown. So I went to U of I just because I wanted to get out and see the world, I guess. And then, yeah, I started in 2019. Was really testing the waters of the fields, I guess. My dad was he's a doctor, so he's you should do med, and I was that's kind of scary. But I think that's every brown person's experience. Yeah, I was just kind of testing out everything from bioengineering, mechanical, electrical, computer. I think I took every class under the moon because I did not know what I wanted to do. But it was great that I had the autonomy to be able to take all those classes.
Yeah.
And then, I went down the even more stereotypical route of computer science, but I really liked it. The reason I came to that was I took a class about actually applying it into industry. So I saw that even though my classes were really hard, I saw the impact that it could make in the world, and I really liked that aspect of it. So that's what really pushed me through my degree, through all the hardships. I was I see how much impact it can make. In my first year, my co-founder Mona, she and I were in electrical engineering class, which is funny because we both ended up not being electrical engineers. Yeah. COVID hit, and she was doing research for her lab in speech and hearing science. So she was working specifically with deaf children and learning about the resources they have in STEM. So, and we were just on Zoom, talking about some lab, and then she came up with the idea. And I was this is cool. I am just starting to code. I'm not one of those kids who was coding from the womb or anything, but I was this is cool. I'd love to help out with in any shape or form. So we formed the team officially in January of 2021. We were just doing it as a small research project, super just kids working together on really bad prototyping and trying it out. And then we decided to apply for the Carl Health-Mathon competition. And that was our first, funding that really brought the energy to the table of oh, wait, this is not just a crappy prototype that we're just doing. It's actually something that can get funding. But even then I was really set on I'm going to be a software engineer. Just wanting a stable career. That's what I envisioned even going into college. So after I graduated, so it was about 3 years of working on ASL Aspire, we had I think about $200,000 in funding. And around that time I still started a full-time job as a software engineer. And once I started working full-time, I realized I was oh, I don't think this is for me. And so I worked for a year and a half, and then I quit to go back to school part-time and then work on ASL full-time. And yeah, I really love, the things I do. That's why I quit my job. I was I just don't find the joy and the impact that I'm making. At my other job, it was great, but I was, making a software for the very, very rich. And what I'm working on right now is really helping people in need. And so I found that I can use my skill set to actually help people who need it. And that's what I want to do with my life, even if it's not the traditional route of what I envisioned. I always was okay, I'm going to do the 3 to 5 years at this company and then hop to the next, and then that didn't go as planned. But I'm really grateful that I was able to try it out and not have any regrets with my life.
Right. After graduation, almost none of our careers really go the way we plan it, and there's just everything changes. There's a lot more variables that we just don't take into effect. We think that
Right.
everything stays the same, and we kind of move forward. You graduated in 23,
22.
22.
Yes.
3 years?
Yes.
Nice.
Yeah.
So, and then you started work full time, 1 year and a half, and then went back to school. Why did you just not work on ASL Aspire and decided to go back to school?
Yeah, a couple of reasons. So when I was at my full time, I realized that there was more that I wanted to learn
Mm-hmm.
from like actual um, like teachers and professors. I feel like I lacked a lot of that being like fully in COVID school. So
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to go like in the classroom and learn from them. I just also felt like there was a lot of gaps within my education that I found like when I went to industry,
Mm-hmm.
and it's like really hard to be able to like have the discipline to
Mm-hmm.
like learn like obviously you learn on the job, but like you don't learn the full like breadth of the topics that you're picking up. So for example, like I had never taken a class on UI UX,
Right.
and I was learning bits and pieces from my designer that I worked with, but like actual principles of design is so important when you're a front end
Mm-hmm.
software engineer. It was just like I was missing core fundamentals.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely, you can learn it on the job. I'm not saying you can't. I did learn a lot in my job, but I just felt like I really wanted to have like a more like full, I don't know, skill set in
Mm-hmm.
that realm. And I really liked front end, and I had never taken a front end class in my life. So I was like, can we go back to school and learn a little bit more on that end? And also for ASL Aspire, I do business, so it was like I wasn't able to use like my coding abilities, if you
Yeah.
will, which I love doing business for that. Like I love running operations because it's like a different side of my brain.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I didn't fully just like drop everything
I
for
got
it.
it. So, talking about ASL Aspire and the way it started, you said Mona was doing a research for deaf and hard of hearing students.
Mm-hmm.
Um, is this after you guys met in the electrical engineering class? And
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
So, what was the project that she was working on, and what about it made you interested?
Yeah, so she was really diving into like what resources are already in the classroom,
Okay.
specifically in STEM, because she also worked in a lab where she interacted with deaf scientists, and she saw like firsthand that instead of, like spending majority of their time working on like the stuff in the lab, they were just like communicating with each other of like, oh, like which sign do you use for this,
Mm-hmm.
or spelling everything out, and it was just really inefficient. So they
Mm-hmm.
were spending more time talking about the language rather than what's at hand in the lab. And
Right.
so she saw that and then went into Champaign Unit 4 public school, into the classroom, and then like saw like what the teachers had. And so that's when the pain point really came to life, where it was like some teachers, teach a little bit of science, some teach none at all. And so because the students are so behind, a lot of teachers opt to not teach science solely for the reason that, they kind of believe that if they're already failing the standards, it's like they don't have the resources to be able to teach them, so they won't teach at all.
I
And
see.
so the students, like I remember when we first went in, I had like, a preliminary survey where I was like, like, do you love science? And she answered, I don't know. And that kind of was like really
It's
telling.
alarming.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where it was like, most kids are like, I hate math, or like, I hate
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
And to answer, I don't know, to do you love science is crazy, because like that just goes to show that like they haven't been taught it at all.
And it's sad in some ways because like that's just a very small sample size. I'm sure if you go around the
Yeah,
country too, and like just not knowing science, that automatically puts a lot of people behind.
for
How
sure.
many total deaf or hard of hearing students are there in the United States?
In the US, it's about like 380,000.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Wow, that's a lot.
Yeah.
And in the world, do you know?
In the world,
Wow,
about 32 million.
32 million.
Yeah.
Wow. So this has the potential to make a huge impact on a global scale.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
How does ASL Aspire make money?
Yeah, so we have kind of two ways that we make money. So the first is just the traditional like subscription. So we
Okay.
sell directly to schools
Okay.
and parents if they want. We've found a lot of interest in, parents who like want to help their kids, but
Right.
they have nothing. So we opened it up to parents as well, but we primarily target, schools because we understand that most of the kids go to either public schools or deaf residential schools. So that's a subscription model.
Okay.
And then we also do, in terms of our revenue, we also do consulting to zoos, museums, and science centers to
Nice.
bring education or science education and make it more accessible for them. So, even here in Chicago, a lot of places like, Shedd Aquarium or, the Lincoln Park Zoo, it takes upwards of 2 weeks to request an interpreter if you do want somebody there.
Okay.
Some of the exhibits, like Lincoln Park Zoo, is great because some of the exhibits do have like ASL like QR codes. But definitely like pushing for more of that. Having that as the like industry standard is kind of what we're like pushing for.
Having access to it if needed.
Exactly.
Yeah. At the end of the day, that's what's important. Who were your first customers? I assume probably in the Champaign area.
Yeah. So Champaign Unit 4 was the first like pilot study that we ran. Fully just like, the first couple of months we were in the classroom. And then
and you're doing this for free? You were just
that one was fully free.
Okay.
We just wanted to learn from the students and the teacher herself. Right. And then we ran a paid pilot in I think 2022 to 2023 school year. And that was with 5 schools. They were a mix of deaf residential and public schools. So we did it with a school in Lyle, which was a public school, and then I believe Indiana School for the Deaf and Ohio School for the Deaf. So those gave us like a new perspective because we, only knew the public school area because like we all went to either public school or private school, but we never saw deaf residential schools, which is much, much different. Showed us, especially, it really opened our eyes to like who decision makers are at those schools and like who we need to talk to. But yeah, we had about 5 schools in a pilot. Those were all paid, but again, varying amounts just because we wanted to like really learn from them.
Department of Education. Yes. How big of a role does that play for your space especially? Yeah,
so I will say it's a little interesting just the way that things work. So we really heavily rely on special education funding. So even though things have been going awry with the Department of Education, for a lack of a better word, special education got moved into health service, HHS department in federal government. So we're still alive because special education got moved over. Of course, they took a cut. So we were initially working with, a national budget of $122 billion. It's still kind of pending of how much HHS is gonna, just because it's every day, I swear, wake up, something new. So I don't really know. I do know, obviously, it's gonna be a subset of that. They're not gonna take that full budget and cut out HHS.
So on a grand scale, on a macro scale, that'll have some sort of an impact on just the funding that schools are going to get.
Absolutely. And I think the biggest thing, though, is for us right now, like our focus is getting the word out there. So like the consulting services is the biggest thing to get us into the schools. So we've been sustainable up until now because of, private donors and, zoos, museums, and science centers really rely on their donors. And so because they're not related to Department of Education, I've been good so far. I will say, again, like even within schools, like state governments have a big, say in things. And a lot of schools, yes, they do rely on federal government, but it's a slow process with like things. And so, I mean, we'll never know what's going to happen.
You and Mona are initially building ASL Aspire. Can you go a little bit deeper into exactly what ASL Aspire is? Who is doing the teaching? What are the programs? Just so if anyone is watching this and knows someone who, is deaf or hard of hearing, they have a better idea and understanding.
Yeah, absolutely. So we are not teachers, and I will never be teaching on the platform, okay? So what we do is we initially, when we first started, worked with an organization out of Rochester Institute of Technology, which is called ASL Core. And they were a group of deaf scientists who were creating the language. So a big portion of this, like the problem statement, is the science terminology in ASL is very limited or doesn't exist. So like, let's take like the periodic table, for example. Only 4 elements are in ASL. Everything else you'd have to spell it out.
I see.
So
Okay.
a big part of what we do and what we offer is, funding the deaf scientists to create the language. And so it's kind of twofold, our approach. So we fund the deaf scientists, and then we also fund teachers of the deaf. So we have, a group of, teachers of the deaf, people who have masters in deaf education, who are creating our deaf ed curriculum, with the deaf scientists being the core of like the videos. So the kids will be able to see exactly like, this is somebody who's made it in the field. Right. And for some of them, like, they're the first in their fields. And so it's insane to see that, like, there's so few out there, and like, we just want to give them a platform. So a lot of times, like 97% of deaf kids both have hearing parents. So it's tough when you don't have the same access as your parents, and it's hard to like see yourself have the same, job, or like have a role model, because it's like, I don't have the same access. Exactly. Yeah. And so having like these videos and then seeing like there's actually, people who've made it in this field, it's definitely like awareness, and like gives them inspiration too, in some sense. Right.
It shows them that it's possible.
Absolutely, yeah. So the way the platform works is it's split up by grade, and then also by like subject, obviously, and then even by module. So we stick with the standards because we want the kids to get to the standards. So we use NGSS, which is like Next Generation Science Standards in America. And so that's really adaptable for every school. So it's not like I'm just catering to, deaf residential or just public. It's like everybody can use it. And the teacher assigns them, a specific module. Our platform is very personalizable, because a lot of times within one classroom they're grouped by age, but their literacy is all over the place. So there could be up to 4 to 5 grade levels within one single classroom. And so it's really tough for teachers to be able to like just pick up a platform and then only like assign one thing to their kids, because some kids are excelling, and some kids are so behind. And so we wanted to make it easy for them to like catch everyone up to speed, and also be able to test the kids who are already excelling, like not make sure everybody is being
challenged.
Exactly, being challenged. We have like a pre-quiz where they like get put on a baseline. Based on that, we embed the like curriculum into the games. So they're playing games and they're learning. All those scores are internally sent back to the teachers. So the kids don't know that like everything is all getting sent to the teachers. They know how well they're doing on the games. And then there's like post quiz, which kind of shows like how much the student has improved from the beginning to the end.
You and Manav built this initially. Who's joining your team? What are they doing? How is ASL Aspire growing? And let's start with that.
Yeah, so it started off with 9 of us.
Oh wow,
and
big team.
It's silly to say we had 9 co-founders, but that's genuinely like how it started. It was like 9 of us working on this project.
Right.
Out of the 9, like 3 of us have stuck the whole time. It was Mona's idea, so she's with us, me, and then one more, my chief innovation officer. His name is Ethan, so he leads game design team. And so we've employed like I said, like deaf professionals, linguists, teachers of the deaf, on the game side, like obviously software engineers, game developers. On my end, like marketing, advertising, the whole 9 yards to get this product like up and running and into the hands of the kids at the end of the day.
Right. So you guys were accepted into iVenture, and you started working with Manu and the rest of the cohort. I actually spoke with Manu and Kara, in the last 2 conversations. So I'm very curious to learn how that ecosystem, that environment was helping you and your team.
Yeah.
And really growing ASL Aspire into what it is today.
Yeah. So prior to iVenture, we had a lot of research funding. So through the university, we had about like 30,000 through just like research grants. And so we really just saw ourselves as like a research project up until iVenture. And we even did CoZad as like a business, but we still like in our minds are like, we're a research like based company. We were producing research papers, like that was our end goal. But once we joined iVenture, I think that's definitely when we pivoted like mentally too,
Mm-hmm.
of like, okay, like research is great. And, all of us, we're still in academia.
Mm-hmm.
Mona's doing her PhD, I'm in my master's program. So nothing against academia, but we realized that like our papers weren't making an impact on the
Mm-hmm.
actual, kids and the teachers and everybody.
Right.
It was just raising awareness, which is great. We definitely do need more awareness, but if our goal was impact, we were not reaching that.
Right.
And so that's when we definitely pivoted and started, like, that's when I started learning more about business,
Good.
of how to, the A to Z of marketing and advertising and getting our word out there and what is even PR and stuff
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah.
And so I think it was perfect that we did iVenture that summer, because I feel like we had such a great, like, mentors in the business world. Like, this is all new to me. I'm a computer science kid at my
Mm-hmm.
core, so I don't know anything about this. So
Yeah.
it was great. Like, they were the ones who helped us, really pushed us to do a paid pilot program. I
Mm-hmm.
didn't even know you could like sell without like having a real legitimate product
Yeah.
there. Like, really like shooting for the stars. And I guess that's really what business is at the end of the day. But
Yeah.
they were the ones who helped me with like everything from writing like LOIs for the schools that we worked with, how to negotiate with like the contracts and like the directors of the schools that we were at. And yeah, just like really establishing our business as like yeah, we're actually doing this now.
Yeah.
It's not just a school project. I just graduated at that time, so it was like it was really fresh that like,
Yeah.
okay, this is the real world now. So it was
It
cool.
is. You mentioned that academia and publishing papers not really doing not
Yeah,
doing too much impact.
yeah, definitely. And
Yeah.
like it's so far behind to what
Right.
industry is, because we've seen, like, I mean, even in our work, we looked at like who else has kind of done what we've
Right.
done.
Right.
And there have been NSF, papers that have came out and like grants that have been awarded for companies who've done exactly what we did.
Mm-hmm.
But I was back in 2013, and a whole decade has gone by, and
The timing is also really important.
it is,
Yeah, I
yeah,
think now is a much better timing than back then,
for
because they
sure.
were just building so many other things. It's kind of got forgotten about.
Yeah,
Again, academia, it's not doing the impact. I think in the United States, you have to be in business to even make
for
impact.
sure.
Like that's the way. Like academia traditionally was the way for people to like publish a paper and get their name out there.
Right.
Now it's business and doing podcasts or doing
Yeah.
interviews. So I think you're doing the right things in terms of spreading the word, making that impact. What's the current landscape like in terms of the other companies, similar missions, doing the same things?
Yeah, so there's one other company that's like very similar to what we're doing, but we're a lot older in some sense,
Mm-hmm.
of like our product has been building for the
Right.
last 5 years, and so they're fairly new. Other than them, like other companies that exist in the world within like the school system, like what they're already using is like the traditional like Khan Academy or IXL learning,
Mm-hmm.
and they are just missing the mark for deaf students,
Mm-hmm.
because they are not in ASL and that's their native language. It's kind of like trying to teach it in English is like their
Right.
second language, and so their literacy scores are so low. It's like an average high schooler who's deaf is at a fourth grade literacy. So trying to
Wow.
teach in English is like impossible. So handing them something that's like a one size fits all, like Khan Academy or IXL, is not the best usage of like
Better than nothing, but it's not going to do the best.
exactly. So that's like what's in the classrooms, and then in the like actual ASL world, there are little to none that are actually trying to sell into schools. There's a lot of like beginner like ASL app or stuff like that. A lot of dictionaries out there, not any like actual
Interactive.
exactly,
Yeah.
or like even anything curriculum based. Like
I see. Okay.
they just kind of exist in like the beginner world, and we're really focusing on kids whose native language is
Mm-hmm.
they're fluent in ASL.
Over the last year, right? What have been some of the main events or accomplishments that have given you a lot of momentum?
Yeah, so Arch Grants, we received that in, I want to say May of last year. So we're reaching our 1 year mark.
Nice.
And
So what is it?
Arch Grants is a $100,000 non-dilutive grant from based out of St. Louis. So
Okay.
my co-founder, she's based out of St. Louis, so it works perfectly. And yeah, it's kind of like I venture in the sense of like you get the funding and then you also are immersed in this community. So they've been so helpful in like getting our name out there. They like do a lot of due diligence to help us.
Good.
In terms of like even just legals. Like I was like, I need a CPA for taxes, like anything I ever wanted. They're so quick with it, and they really want the mentorship and like the community for the entire year, which is so great that like they're so adamant with keeping us together as like an ecosystem, if you will. So we've been doing a lot of things out of St. Louis. It's been great. We've been working with, you know, super cool institutions. We ran you know, a deaf focus group with the St. Louis Zoo, which was so great to like really, you know, bring the community in of like the deaf and hard of hearing people in St. Louis, hear what they have to say about like how they feel about accessibility. And like some super also undisclosed projects in St. Louis, but yeah, no, we're super excited. I mean, I will say, I mean, most of it is because of the amazing like connections and network of Arch Grants.
That's amazing. And yeah, I think, you know, I've Arch Grant. Those are great ways to meet amazing people, kind of get great momentum, and become a better builder and business person as well.
So TechCrunch, we attended November of last year, I believe. So we were part of like the Disrupt 200, which is like the top 200 startup companies. And what they actually did last year was they opened it up. So even if you don't make top 20, you still get like a booth and you're able to exhibit.
Good.
And so also get like a minute on the stage. So I use that time definitely. I mean, learned a lot about SF culture from going to TechCrunch. That was my first time in SF as a builder, so I learned a lot. But yeah, just like spreading awareness. I mean, it was actually kind of funny because they put education and fintech right next to each other. So I was like standing in front of a bunch of like cryptocurrency companies. So people walking by were like confused as heck. But no, yeah, it was great. I mean, the main reason I went to TechCrunch, like the actual conference, was to learn a lot. I mean, about like what's out there and get our word out there. We were able to, you know, meet with people from the California Department of Education. We were down there, and then also like be able to connect with the two schools of the deaf, which is California School for the Deaf, Fremont, and then Riverside. So that was like my main goals. I got out of there, and then afterwards a reporter reached out to me, and so she wrote an article about us, which was super cool. I mean, like a dream, honestly. Like I've always like I've always read TechCrunch articles, like they're always on my timeline. So it was crazy to see that we were on there like once upon a time. So
it's got to be surreal, the thing you're building. You know, it comes to life and it grows, and now it's like, you know, everyone knows it's on TechCrunch.
It was,
what's your vision or goal for 2025 and 2026?
Yeah, so hopefully, if all goes well, like short-term goal is next week we'll be launching our like teacher dashboard platform, which is, you know, everything that they've been wanting and asking for. So we're finally releasing that. So, you know, leading into the end of the year, we really want, you know, to get school signed on. I mean, that's an aspirational goal. One of our main things that we're doing in this year too is really securing our partnerships with those other organizations to get our word out there. So like if we are, you know, in zoos or museums, being able to see, you know, ASL Aspire's name right there, that really brings awareness, to like everyone, that like there should be accessibility, and also B, to people who are decision makers within schools. So it's kind of a win-win that like we're helping bring accessibility to these science educational institutions, but also bring us into the school market. It is a tough market to crack into, so it's good that we have that avenue to get through.
Absolutely. You talked about partnerships with schools and nonprofits or zoos, museums. How do you go about building those relationships? How do you like reach out, or do you see them somewhere and just start talking? How does that work?
Yeah, so sometimes it's through like an internal connection or somewhere somehow, and then other times it's just like cold outreach. You know, especially like the accessibility coordinators or curriculum directors, like they're always looking for ways to make things more accessible.
Mm-hmm.
And so putting it right in front of them, they're like, hey, like we do this, here's our offerings. It's very simple for you guys. Like all you need to do is like, we will connect you to everyone. So with NASA, what we've been doing is they have like monitors at their Houston Space Center. And so we've been working with their curriculum directors and their head of communications to be like, every person who's coming into the center, they'll be able to see exactly like the person signing and then also having like that role model, right?
How can people that maybe don't have this issue or don't know anyone who
Yeah.
is in their community who's deaf or hard of hearing, how can they support or help you, I should say ASL Aspire's mission,
Yeah.
as well as, other kids or students who face this?
Yeah. I think first, like the biggest thing for us is like spreading awareness. Like about 10% are deaf or hard of hearing, but I mean, me personally, I don't have any like family members or anyone even extended that's deaf or hard of hearing. So, but that doesn't mean that, my friend doesn't like, I mean, Mona herself, she has a brother who's hard of hearing. So it doesn't mean that it's not far out of reach. So,
Right.
Yeah, definitely just being able to like, I think for people who aren't in the space, especially if you are kind of in the business world, everyone's very like interconnected. So
Yeah.
being able to like, support us, like bringing, the right people in front of us, that really helps us, especially as a small startup.
Like you said, probably one or two connections away.
Yeah.
Either know someone or directly like impacted. So that is, it's just good to know when, it's good to know about ASL Aspire because it's so uniquely positioned to help deaf or hard of hearing kids.
Absolutely.
And you guys only focus on that space, K through 12, right?
Yes.
Do you think ever it'll maybe spread to any other areas or maybe beyond 12th grade?
Yeah, so we are thinking of expanding two ways right now. So we're called ASL Aspire and not anything like STEM related because we really just want to help like bring, ASL education out there and make it more accessible. So like the name states, like we want kids to be aspirational, like they can be whatever they want to be. So our goal is not to produce the next, scientist or doctor. I mean, that would be amazing if someone could do that. But we really just want kids to know that, like, here is the education you're like deserve as like a right, and you can take that and do whatever you want with that. Like,
so yeah, we really want to expand outside of STEM. STEM is very, very underrepresented. So it's about 10% are deaf and hard of hearing, but in the STEM world, it's about 0.01%. So that's a huge discrepancy. And I mean, obviously, that's the problem statement, right? So that's why we're focusing specifically on STEM right now. But that doesn't mean we won't down the line go into like ELA, history, all that sorts. And then, like I said, right now, the focus is on bringing, accessible education to them. But that doesn't mean, we're stopping with just deaf students. We really do want to go into the hearing students market. ASL is a foreign language requirement. A lot of ASL teachers have come up to us and wanted to like use it in their classrooms. And I was like, I don't think science modules is for you. So down the line, we will definitely make it kind of, like a Duolingo where you can learn ASL as a foreign language.
Sweet.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, I feel like it's still the beginning of your journey, even though it's been like 4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
It's still, there's
fresh.
a lot more to be accomplished and done. So it's cool to know that there's possibilities and you can get there. Yeah, I think overall that those were the majority of the questions I wanted to ask you about ASL Aspire, its journey. Would be curious to talk about yourself and your relationship with Mona as well. And how do you guys best work together and what you do that she doesn't do, what she does that you don't do, and how you form a good partnership. You also have Ethan, like you mentioned, so all three of you really.
Yeah. I think we're definitely like learning as we go, but like since we are like, you know, a language learning platform, if you will, in some sense, we really like internally focus on communication. And so I think like the only way we've survived remote this long is because we've been very good communicators with each other and just like always like, you know, keeping each other up to date on like whatever it is, and not just about ASL Aspire. So like, you know, like life updates. Like for example, like I'm like, hey, I want to quit my job. Just wanted to let you guys know it's on the timeline, or I'm going back to school, and like exciting stuff. And like, I think the reason we've been able to work so well together, like us three, is just like we're also like friends, and so having sometimes like time, like downtime to just like talk about our own lives and like not related to work, I think that helps our relationship a lot. I will say we also go to like founders coaching sessions and stuff like that because yeah, things happen with our boards, you know, it's very a real thing that founders don't talk about, but everyone's going through something internally, whether that's with their own co-founders. I mean, thankfully I had little to no problems with my co-founders, but we do have problems, you know. I know. But that doesn't mean we don't have, you know, internal problems of our own that we have to work through. I mean, when you're in a startup, you don't have HR, you are the HR, right? And so we're young and we have a lot of people who are working with us who, you know, their kids are closer in age to me. So working with people that are like nearly double my age and trying to be the HR, it's tough. And so I think a lot of like my founder like relationship and how we grew to be so strong is like working through other people's problems and like figuring out, you know, the whole space. And like sometimes you need to let things go, not everything can work out, so we're still learning. I mean, as we go, like we all, I think it's great, like I always say this, that all three of us have like very different ways that our brain works. And so I think that's to our benefit. Like we don't think the same, which is so helpful, especially in those rough times, because when you're dealing with conflict, like if everyone thought the same way, we'd all just be like throwing like fuel into a fire. Like it's horrible. And so it's great that like diversity of thought of like, okay, someone else is coming from like a more empathetic like thought or I don't know, whatever it may be. But yeah, I will say coaching sessions help a lot with founder relationships and also just like team relationships. It's hard being a remote company. I mean, we do have hubs in St. Louis and Chicago, but you know, I have team members from California to DC, so everybody's everywhere.
Kind of interested to learn about your experience in grad school so far. A little unrelated, but I also went to grad school at U of I, but I was in Champaign. You're in Chicago. How's that been so far? What have you learned? What are you excited about? Has it been worth it?
Yeah, I mean, I like really like asked everyone I knew. I was like, is this worth it? Am I just doing it to like run away from my job? I don't know. Like, I definitely went in with like a clear-cut goal of like strengthening the skills that I didn't, not strengthening, building skills I didn't have. And so it was great because alongside my like CS degree, I was able to take entrepreneurship classes. So like business management as an engineer or whatever it's called. And so I got to take classes like to actually learn from a textbook how to, you know, raise or all of the terminology behind VC. I mean, I learned it from trying to raise, but now going backwards learning it, it was great. Like I was like, wow, I knew all this stuff because I was like, you know, yelled at by an investor, but now I get to learn it. So being able to take like business and like random marketing classes like alongside my degree like really helped because I was able to like tie them together. So being able to like see like how I can use my degree. So like I do a lot of automation in marketing, which is like so random, but I know how to do that because that's what my degree is for. So being able to like kind of put like see the intersection of technology and entrepreneurship. I mean, that's exactly what TEC is for at U of I. Yeah, exactly. And so it's been great. I mean, alongside just being able to detach and do full research and theory, I mean, I love that world. That's why I went back. I was like, this is so great. I just get to read papers all day. Like it's very much so La La Land in the theory world, but I love it. Like I'm able to like not be in the present industry world of like all the chaos that's happening. It's
someone scratches their head on the other side of the world and it has an impact. It could
Yeah.
have an impact here. I'm sure you know this, but you've inspired probably hundreds, if not thousands, of people. And you should definitely be very proud of yourself with what you and your team have accomplished. Appreciate all your thoughts. I think for the majority of us who didn't maybe know ASL Aspire in detail, we definitely understood a lot more. So thank you. Thank you for joining me. And
thank you for having me.
Of course. I mean, I love bringing U of I students and just, people I've kind of ran across before, and they're still building, they're still growing. And that's cool to see because I saw you like 3 years ago, right? And you're still going at it with your team, which is amazing. You're still making an impact and you're growing. So yeah, if there's any closing thoughts, last words, feel free.
Yeah, I mean, if this is going out to the Chicago community, I mean, would love any warm intros to like schools or, deaf programs or any anywhere in the museum industry that if anybody has random connections. I mean, I would love a nice intro. Biggest thing for us is just like continuing to scale. Like, if you guys can in any shape or form help us bring awareness to the topic, even if it doesn't, relate to you personally, just like having supporters is so nice. I mean, I run across a lot of people who are like, I've seen you on LinkedIn. I was like, okay, that's good. Like, my word is getting out there, and that's the biggest thing that I could ever ask for. I always say, I mean, a VC is going to be mad that I say this, but my thing is always like, if I can help one student, I feel like I've done enough for the world. Like, that's all I could ever ask for is like one kid comes out of this program successful.